Come on. Do I sound like I'm joking? Do I sound like I'm playing? When you look into my eyes, you understand what I'm saying? Let me say it to you slowly, and it may sound scandalous. I don't think that you can handle this.
All right, once again, we are on. I am the Mojo King. He is the great Donnie Oooh, and we are Hidden Gems Football. This is the NFL's Divisional Round Playoff Edition. How are you today, Mr. Oooh?
I'm doing pretty good. I cannot complain. Matter of fact, I can complain about the numerous parlays that I missed out on due to the, volatile nature of some of these wild card games. But like you said, we're on to the divisional round. So, yeah. How are you doing today, Mo?
I'm living the life. Of course, if any of my parlays had hit, I'd be living the double life. But, it is what it is. All right. We're going to jump right into it. Forget last week. We're talking this week, this weekend. So first game up is the 9-8 Jacksonville Jaguars. They are going to Kansas City to face the 14-3 Chiefs. The Chiefs are 8.5-point favorites, and the total is 53.5 according to the books, which means that Vegas is expecting the score to be Jacksonville 22.5, Kansas City 31. On the injury front, Jacksonville has two of their offensive linemen in doubt for Sunday. Center Luke Fortner and right guard Brandon Scherf. I think I said his name right. Meanwhile, the Chiefs are having an issue at wide receiver. McCole Hardman is listed as having a pelvis injury. He's had it since mid-season, and Andy Reid is saying it's not necessarily looking good for him this weekend. I think he's out. But on the bright side, they do have Sky Moore. It looks like he's returning. All right, what is your take on this game, Donnie?
Where should I start? Because I got my trusty notes again. I'm focused. Well, as focused as I'm going to be. Jacksonville. I'll start with them because they're actually a target of my ire. Jacksonville had an epic comeback this past week, and I know we're supposed to be looking forward and not backwards, but look, I got to give y'all some type of backstory. Jacksonville, like I said, had an epic comeback this week against those Chargers, who would be the last time I speak of them. They was trailing 27-0 and looked totally spooked and inept. Trevor Lawrence had half that nightmares are made of. On the second play of the game, he threw an interception. He followed that up with three more interceptions. Coincidentally, all three of the other interceptions were caught by Asante Samuel Jr., who only had two interceptions for the whole year. So I'm just thinking, Jacksonville's going to prove that they do not belong. But, oh, boy, was I mistaken. But what really, really got me contemplating who I'm going to try to even attempt to pick in this game is Trevor Lawrence. What second-year quarterback do you know in his first playoff game ever throws 4 interceptions in the first half? He doesn't get down on himself. He decides to, you know what? I'm going to throw 4 touchdowns in the second half. Everything that people were saying when he was in Clemson, coming into the NFL, was like, oh yeah, he's the next Peyton Man. Look, I've even said on this platform, look, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is everybody thinks he's cracked up to be, but he made me eat crow. So with that being said, now on the Kansas City side, they're coming off a week. They're coming off a week off because they had to bye. A bye week, which was a byproduct of them getting the number 1 seed due to the unfortunate circumstances of that Bills-Bengals game a couple weeks ago. I personally don't believe that Kansas City would have gotten the number 1 seed. How are they going to take advantage of this? I personally think that this week off might be a detriment because you have Jacksonville with the momentum carrying on and just having this belief of we can't be stopped. And you have Kansas City. I'm not saying they were resting on their laurels, but they've been kind of fat cats. If you think about it, they have been at least in the championship game. The last 4 or 5 seasons with 2 Super Bowl appearances. So they might be overlooking Jacksonville. Now, I'll get into a couple of stats and then I'll pass it over to you, Mo. Pat Mahomes threw for 5,200 yards with 41 touchdowns and 12 interceptions this year. He also was their second leading rusher, which to me is kind of concerning because he was the second leading rusher with 358 yards for the year. Juju Smith-Schuster had a bounce-back season with 78 catches. But if anybody who has followed Kansas City, especially over this dynastic run, even though it's only given up one championship, they know the Chiefs go, have Travis Kelce goes. Travis Kelce had another monster year, 110 catches for over 1,300 yards. On defense, Chris Jones had 15 and a half sacks. And to me, Kansas City's defense is not really vaunted at all. Yeah, you have Chris Jones, who's an all-pro player. But it really goes down to their defensive coordinator. I'm sorry, I really blanked on that name. But Spags, yeah, him. For some reason, he shines brightest in the postseason. Like, he comes up with these schemes that is designed to just throw the opposing offense off. And of course, they have Andy Reid, the czar himself. No pun intended, hidden Jim czar. But I'll say all that to say this. They played each other already this season, which is actually an ongoing theme in a couple of these matchups in the divisional round. They played each other in week 10. Kansas City won 27-17. Jacksonville actually won the turnover battle in that game 3-0. Jacksonville actually, since that game, won 7 of their last 8, including this come from behind victory in the wild card game. And other stat is the top 5 in defensive efficiency since the bye week in week 11. I say all that to say, my head is telling me to pick Kansas City, so I'm going to go Kansas City. But it will not be a blowout because, as I've said numerous times, Kansas City doesn't really blow people out. They're not that explosive, so that's my thought. How about you?
All right, well, let's get into the spread now. It's 8.5 points. It sounds like you will go with Jacksonville.
I'll go with Jacksonville against the spread, yeah.
All right. You have any take on the over-under? It's 53.5.
The over-under I will stay away from. But like I said, Jacksonville, I believe their last 6 victories have all come from behind victories. And combined with the fact that Kansas City doesn't really blow anybody out, I don't see Kansas City covering that spread because I got bit in my butt way too many times with going with the favorite with the spread, and they didn't cover it all. And that's kind of a big spread, all things considering.
Yeah, once you get over a touchdown, it better be a team that is truly much better than the team that they're playing against. But the thing about this matchup is that I think Kansas City is a lot better. I'm not particularly worried about the bye because I feel like Kansas City's been through this enough that when we start talking about Philadelphia, I might start worrying about the bye. But with Kansas City, I think their experience is going to be fine. Jacksonville is having a Cinderella run, like you mentioned, all the comebacks that they've been coming back, that they've been doing lately. I just don't think that they can do it against Kansas City, in part because Mahomes. I just don't think Mahomes would possibly allow his team to do what the Chargers did. It will be a special throw somewhere that will make something happen, another score happen. With that said, that 8.5 points is really troubling to me. I think Kansas City is going to win. I'm afraid of that 8.5 points because a comeback could knock it down within, maybe it's 10. They knock it down to 3 or 2. So I don't think I'm betting that spread. But the one thing I will say is that I think now there's been all overs all the last week. Everything was over. And I think that they've been boosting these totals up a little bit. Because when I looked at how the scores are going to go, it would be 22-31, 22.5-31. I have a trouble seeing this game go over. Now, I know they could go wild or whatever, but I just don't really see it. I'm going to take the under. That's the one bet I'm taking from this game. I might take the under and Kansas City for the win to combine it.
I tend to agree with you about taking the under. Also, what I believe is kind of underrated for on Jacksonville's side is their running game. Travis Etienne had a quiet 100-yard rushing game this past week in the wild card game, and he made the play of the game on that 4th and short, where I think he ran about 15-20 yards to put them in prime field goal range. And I'm not that confident in Kansas City stopping the run. So that also will shorten the game. And I'm quite sure one of Jacksonville's philosophies will be to try to keep Patrick Mahomes on the bench as long as possible. So they were going to lean on that running game, which will lead to the under.
I have one quick question for you on this game.
Okay.
Do you think Kadarius Toney is going to make an impact in this game?
Nope. Nope.
All right.
Because I believe karma is a you-know-what. And there's no way he's going to be a star the same week. Matter of fact, the same night that the Giants in in Philly. No, I'll be surprised if he gets 2 catches.
Well, you know what's funny? I think he might get 2 catches and one of them be a touchdown. But that's just me, because I don't believe in karma necessarily. But since you mentioned him, let's move on to the next game. The 9-7-1 New York Giants are heading to Philadelphia to face the 14-3, the number 1 seed Philadelphia Eagles. The total here is expected to be 48.5, while Philadelphia is a 7.5-point favorite. That means Vegas is looking at the score, the Giants 20.5, Philadelphia 28. As far as injuries go, the Giants have one significant injury, but I don't think it's a major injury. Isaiah Hodgkins has an ankle injury, but he played all of last week and actually broke 100 yards for the first time in his career. On the flip side, Philadelphia actually looks to be getting healthier with the bye. Jalen Hurts is expected to practice fully this week, and right tackle Lane Johnson is looking to come back. He's an all-pro. It'd be nice to have him back blocking for Jalen Hurts. Donnie, what do you think about this game?
Okay, like I've said last week, my bias is going to be on full display because I am from New York and I'm pulling for the New York team, which is the Giants. Also, to disprove all my supporters out there that believe that I'm just nothing, I'm full of nothing but Giant slander, because I'm not at all. This is the second matchup. I mean, matter of fact, this is the third matchup. I'm sorry. The third matchup between these two teams. Yes, Philly won both of the previous matchups, but in the last matchup, which is the last game of the season, Giants had nothing to play for. They already was pretty much locked into their seeding, but Philly was playing to maintain their number 1 seed. And do you know, with the Giants playing the majority of backups, the Giants only lost by 6 points. Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, did something this past week. Matter of fact, he made history. And you want to know what history he made? Yeah, this guy will tell you what history. He was the first quarterback in postseason history to throw for over 300 yards, run for 70-plus yards, pass for 2 touchdowns with 0 interceptions. You would think about all the dual threat quarterbacks, and nobody ever really thinks of Daniel Jones as a dual threat quarterback. But he ran for almost 800 yards this year. He was the second leading rusher on the Giants, behind Saquon Barkley. You had Michael Vick in the playoffs. He never attained that that stat. We had Colin Kaepernick in the playoffs numerous times. Went on a Super Bowl run. Never attained that goal, that stat. So that has to be something. And also, I don't believe in the Eagles. All right, they came into the postseason when losing 2 out of the last 3 games, right? Their win was against the Giants in the game I just laid out. It's true that, yeah, Jalen Hurts was injured and out for those 2 losses. But think of it this way. And while people might say that this 2-week break should bode well for Philly, as you said, you know, you got an extra week with the shoulder, and you got Lane Johnson back and so forth. I'm personally believe that whatever momentum that Philly might have had coming into the playoffs, that's been negated by the Giants' stellar win over they are who I said they were, Minnesota Vikings. You know, this is the Giants are giving me vibes of 2007 and 2011, which were coincidentally their last 2 Super Bowl runs. Not so much like I don't believe they're actually going to win the championship because the talent is not on par with those two teams. But just the grittiness of what they've been able to do, just the fact that their coaching staff has consistently put their players in the best possible position to succeed. And there's no juggernaut, sans the 49ers, who we'll get to soon, that I believe that the Giants should ever be scared of. I don't know. It's giving me vibes. And then I think the Giants have their number. Like a lot of teams, when they get to that third meeting in the season, a lot of teams do not sweep all three games. And if one thing this past weekend has proved to me that I really should be more of a believer in the law of averages. So, yeah, I think the Giants are going to win and shock the world and get to the championship game.
Wow. So you got the Giants outright. All right. You have any opinion on the over-under? The total is 48.5. I'm
leaning under. Just once again, based on my philosophy, if the Giants need to keep this game close, which means they need to try to play ball control, not so much ball control with the run, but just control passing and controlling the clock. And once again, that shortens the game. That doesn't give Philly enough, which got multiple chances to be explosive as they've shown throughout the season. So I would lean on the under.
All right. So I'm actually going to use a lot of your points to say the opposite. So you mentioned that Philadelphia was 2-0 against the Giants. And you mentioned the Week 18 game. I don't care about that one at all. I find the Week 14 game much more interesting. Philadelphia went to New York and beat them by 26 points, 48-22. That was a thrashing. Meanwhile, as you mentioned, Daniel Jones was amazing last week. Maybe a little bit out of character for him. During the season, he had 3 300-yard games. One was against Detroit in Week 11. Detroit was very bad against the pass. Do you know who the other two 300 games were against?
No, Mo. Enlighten me.
Well, obviously one was Minnesota. The other one was Minnesota. So he's had 2 great games over the last 3 weeks or so against Minnesota. Whoop-de-doo. Guess what? The Eagles' defense is not Minnesota's defense. To me, if there's any chance, it goes to Saquon Barkley. That's a talented brother, so there's definitely a chance. But I just don't believe in Daniel Jones still. I think that he's had an amazing season. He's done some great things, and he's done some phenomenal things against Minnesota. But like I said, Philadelphia is not Minnesota. On the other side, the Giants have an issue. Their run defense was 27th during the season. Philadelphia, with Jalen Hurts, the 5th ranked running offense. I expect Philadelphia to run them over. And if Jalen's healthy, which we can't say for sure, but if he's healthy, he has A.J. Brown out there. He has Goddard back healthy. Smith ain't really bad. I think this game might get ugly. I'm going to take Philly plus with the 7.5 points. I think they're going to beat them by about 10-14 at least. I have no idea about the over-under. I'm not even messing with that.
I'll say this. You're leaning on the first matchup between them when they lost by, what, you said 26 points? That was also around the time that the Giants themselves was savaged by injury. That was also during a stretch in which they lost. They were 0-3-1 in those 4 games. They were down their tight ends. Saquon wasn't optimum self. I don't believe he was per se injured, but that was right around the time that all the teams were keying on him because Daniel Jones hadn't really turned that corner all the way. And when you say, yes, the Giants are 27th against the run, and Philly is, phenomenal running team. But do you believe that Philly is going to put Jalen Hurts in a position to re-injure that already tender shoulder, which has a target all on it, and take the chance that at some point in this game, Gardner Minshew is going to have to come in the game? I say, yeah, you want to run? Because you can't tell me whether fair or foul, Kayvon Thibodeau don't have his eyes set on trying to drive his helmet directly into that shoulder, which coincidentally would not be roughing the passer if he's a runner. I'm just saying. Also, I believe that last game, the reason why it was somewhat close is because they did not lean on Jalen Hurts as a runner per se, because they wanted to keep him healthy. Only 1 week has passed. Well, yeah, 2 weeks have passed. He has 1 week of rest.
Okay, first of all, I think you are instigating that there's going to be another bounty gate.
No.
So I think Sean, if I see Sean Payton in the stand somewhere, I'm going to start worrying about stuff. All right. Now, the other thing is, though, my answer to you is, of course, why would they put him in harm's way in week 18? This is not the regular season, though. This is the postseason. They're going to need everything they can get from Jalen Hurts. Now, there's always a risk of injury. That's just the way football is. I'm not expecting Philadelphia to be kind-hearted about their quarterback, nor do I expect Jalen Hurts to come out the game unless he is seriously damaged. So
like this,
he's gonna have to carry the trophy with the left hand.
Huh? Yeah, I got you.
All right, but I'm really interested in both of those games so far. But let's move on to Sunday.
Yes, sir.
All right, I would say that this is probably the marquee matchup that everybody's been waiting to see. The 12-4 Cincinnati Bengals are going to Buffalo to face the 13-3 Buffalo Bills. Bills are a 4.5-point favorite. The total is expected to be 48.5 points. That means Cincinnati would score 22. Buffalo would score 26.5. On the injury front, Cincinnati has some issues. They have 3 offensive linemen that are either out or questionable coming this week. Meanwhile, Buffalo is pretty healthy. They have Isaiah McKenzie questionable. He's their slot receiver. That's the reason Cole Beasley was going crazy last week. And maybe more significantly, they have cornerback Dane Jackson. He's dealing with the ankle injury. He came out the middle of last game. He may not be ready for this week. Donnie, what's your take on this game?
I'll start with the Bengals side first. Joe Burrow this past week only threw for 209 yards. Mixon only ran for 39 yards. To me, personally, if it wasn't for that 98-yard fumble recovery and a couple inches difference from a Hail Mary game-tying catch, the Bengals would not be in the divisional round, which is actually shocking to me because I really thought the Bengals were going to roll last week. I mean, yeah, I know Baltimore's defense is formidable or whatever, but I just thought that the Bengals played a okay game. I don't believe that the game that they played last week will be sufficient enough for them to even remain competitive this week. Specifically because of that, what you just said, 3 offensive linemen are injured and I guess questionable for this upcoming game. Now, people would say, well, Joe Burrow got the team to the Super Bowl last year with a poorest offensive line. Yeah, that might be true, but there's a key difference. Last year, he came into the season knowing his offensive line was trash. So it's almost like his internal clock. He knew, all right, I can't depend on this protection. I need to get this ball out the way. You come in and you have the majority of the season knowing that this offensive line has been somewhat stout. That's why he was able to put up the numbers. He was able to put the numbers up. And then in your second playoff matchup, you're stripped of 3/5 of your offensive line, potentially. It's hard for as much adjustments as which teams pride themselves to doing, it's hard to account for 3/5 of your offensive line being missing in action after dealing with the whole season. As for the Bills, they played a very sloppy game this last week. There was no way, and you know what, that Miami should have ever been that close. And at one point, Miami actually had the lead. Remember, the Bills were favored by 13 and a half, 14 points. Matter of fact, I believe at game time, I think there was a 14 and a half point favorite. And I ran with that. I'm like, third string quarterback? Oh, I'm running with it. So imagine my surprise when at the half or right before the half, they're down to a third string quarterback. Josh Allen threw 2 interceptions. They were able to escape with the win, just dudes pure talent. But if they play this way again, and I don't care if it's on the road, I don't care since it's at home, they play this way again against the Bengals, and their matchup was shortened due to the traumatic incident that with Damar Hamlin. So they really wasn't able to kind of size each other up during that game because of, life things happen. So I'm not going against my initial pick to win it all, which was the Bills. Like I literally last week picked that Buffalo was going to win the Super Bowl. So I'm not going to backtrack after one game. But I'm not going to lie. My confidence is severely shaken, and that's just not my nerves. So, I'm going to go with Bills Mafia. But as for the spread, I actually would be tempted to go against the spread. Whoever wins is going to be a nip and tuck game. Nobody's going to blow each other out, and I believe it's going to come down to a field goal. So, against the spread, Bengals, but money line, because I'm riding my pick all the way until the fields will fall off. Bills.
All right. Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. I also am leaning towards the Bills, mostly just because of the offensive line. Both teams looked extremely ugly last week. But when I was watching the games, I don't know, I had a slightly different feeling when I was watching them. Dolphins-Bills game, I was like, Buffalo, what are you doing? Just put them away already. The Bengals game, I was like, oh, crap. They can't put them away. And I was stunned to feel like that. Prior to these couple weeks, I would have this a dead heat. I remember when we were looking at that game, I did not want to make a choice because I didn't know who was going to win. This time I feel somewhat confident that Buffalo is going to win. Always dependent on Josh Allen not doing any of his knucklehead stuff, which he can do it from time to time. The other thing is that Cincinnati just can't run. So you have Mixon back there, but with no linemen, he can't do anything. So they're going to be one-dimensional. I think that will force Burrow to make some risky plays and give Buffalo a chance to get a couple of turnovers that way. So I like Buffalo. I think I'm probably not going to bet it, but if I was going to bet it, I'd actually take Buffalo and the 4.5. Although, like you said, I would expect the game to be relatively close.
Yeah, this game, it should be an entertaining game. And to me, it kind of sucks that we're getting this matchup in the divisional round. I think we even spoke about it prior to the playoffs that, the way things are lining up, they're probably going to have to face each other to get to the championship. And that gives Kansas City a cleaner line. Personally, over the last couple of years, I've felt like attached to Kansas City because a friend of mine, which was a big Kansas City fan, and he passed away. So I've always tried to really, root for the Chiefs, but I'm getting kind of cheap fatigue. So Bills Mafia all the way.
Yo, what's up? I'm Desmond, and I'm the host of Hip to the Games, a podcast from 19 Media Group, where the brilliance of basketball and hip-hop's past and present is genuinely appreciated. Join me every other Friday as we celebrate some of the greatest artists, albums, moments, songs, bars, punchlines, NBA teams, players, just anything and everything to do with the game of rap and the game of basketball. See, if you like basketball and hip-hop, that means you're hip to the game. But no matter where you fall on that spectrum, I encourage you to join the fun every other Friday on your favorite podcast platform, courtesy of the great 19 Media Group.
All right, so This is the finale because of Dallas? All right, anyway, I'm not going to get into that right now. Okay. The finale for the weekend is the 12 and 5 Dallas Cowboys heading to California to face the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers were 13 and 4 this season and are the 3.5-point favorites. The over-under is expected to be 45.5 points. That means Dallas is expected to score 21, San Francisco 24.5 points. Donnie, what's your take on this game?
I would swear I was going to have so much fun talking about this game. You know, everybody just knows I just love talking about the Cowboys. But I really didn't expect to be talking about the Cowboys this week because I thought they were going to lose on Monday. I will give credit where credit is due. Dak shut all his critics up this past week by having a phenomenal game. You know what? I'm going to give him credit. He accounted for 5 touchdowns, 4 passing, 1 rushing. He did something to me that, tell you the truth, I think a lot of people, even his critics, were waiting for him to do. And that's actually play a complete game in the playoffs. He's had multiple times in the postseason, but he's always seemed to be a detriment to his team instead of an attribute. Another thing that was very key was the play calling. It was like literally 50-50 in passes and runs. They had 34 passes, 35 rushes. Yeah, Ezekiel Elliott, personally, I think he's washed up. And I was looking at the stats and I'm like, darn, they pretty much had the same amount of carries. Probably had like 79 yards rushing, and Ezekiel had like 21 yards. And they both ran for maybe like plus 10 times or more. And I'm like, wow, that's telling to me. But being the fact that they was able to keep the game balanced, even when they had the lead, they kept the defense off the field, which means they kept the defense fresh. And that's what they did this past game. Now, on the flip side, San Francisco, this past week, after a shaky start by Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy, exploded in the second half as the Niners blew the doors off the Seahawks. Mr. Purdy threw for 332 yards, and with a combination of Shanahan calling a better controlled game in the second half and Purdy getting more comfortable with the playoff atmosphere, the 49ers was able to show that the juggernaut that they've been over the last 10, 11 games, this 11 game winning streak, I believe, at this point. Plus, the Niners in that game as a whole, having Debo's back after some shady going-ons with the Seahawks defender, just really just galvanized them and got them out of whatever funk they were going through in that first half. But, you know, this is a rematch from last year's wildcard game. San Francisco had pretty much the same roster except for 2 big positions. One, they had Jimmy G behind center, and Jimmy G was definitely just a game manager. And they did not have Christian McCaffrey in the backfield. And I believe that even if Dallas has closed that gap in between here, that's the gap that was created by the acquisition of Christian McCaffrey. Because just in the first or second drive of last week's game, he broke a 60 some odd yard run in the first quarter. He had over 100 yards, which got rushing. He's always a threat coming out the backfield. And that just makes Debo even more dangerous. And Debo ate them up last year. So, once again, riding my prediction, and just for the fact that, all right, Dallas shut me up 1 week. They ain't shutting me up for the rest of this week. I'm going 49ers. That's what I'm going to say. Back to you, Mo.
All right. To me, there's a couple of things I look at here. One, San Francisco has won 10 straight games at this point. I don't know if they remember how to lose. Last week did raise some questions for me as far as Purdy, though. The stat lines look great. The end of the game looked like a blowout. His actions in the beginning of the game were a little, I was like, oh, that's why you were drafted so late. Okay. Now he recovered and did pretty well. Did phenomenal by the end of the game. But I am a little worried that he will start out like that again and not get as lucky. With that said, I could say the same for Dak. I mean, Dak was phenomenal last week, but his history has shown that he may have his bad moments himself. But when I think about it, what it all comes down to me is that Dallas is 22nd versus the run. I have a feeling Kyle Shanahan will exploit that. So just the way the Cowboys were able to run on Tampa, which I think also helped their passing game, I think San Francisco is going to do that to Dallas. So I like San Francisco. The 3.5 points, I don't think I have an issue with that. And actually, the one bet I have made so far is I have bet the over in this game. San Francisco has consistently been scoring over 30. Dallas has been consistently scoring at least in the mid to upper 20s. This game should fly by the 45.5. I was actually stunned when I saw it so low. I've already bet the over. I probably will bet it again to add to some parlays here and there. That is my pick of the week if you were going to give me one thing to pick.
What's the spread again?
The spread is 3.5 San Francisco, and the over-under is 45.5.
I'm leaning toward the over, and I believe if San Francisco is going to win, they're going to win more than a field goal. They'll probably win by a touchdown. If Dallas is going to win, they'll win by field goal. Maybe, because their kicker, oh boy, I didn't even bring that up. Their kicker missed not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 extra points. Not field goals, extra points. Do you know how many people lost money based on him missing 4 extra points?
I thought it was a very smart job by the Cowboys to let him kick the 5th one, get one through with uprights. Hopefully that will clear out his head a little bit. But yeah, I would be. You know what? I was joking on Twitter last week about that will end up happening. That Tampa's going to come all the way back, and then Dallas is going to get a game-winning field goal. If it happens this week, just remember you heard it here first. I will be upset because all my bets will be going up in flames. But I would not be stunned if Dallas wins by game-winning field goal right at the end.
You're having faith? Any type of faith in Dallas?
No. Listen, I'm still taking San Francisco. I'm just saying that I don't believe in karma, but I do believe in irony. And that would be the ironic thing to happen.
Okay. I was gonna say, I'm like, look. Normally, I am not one to knock anybody's belief in any other team or whatever, but
all right. Before we sign off, just because I mentioned that the over is my favorite thing, what do you think is your favorite play for this week?
Darn, you caught me off guard with that one.
While you think about that, I will say I have one more prop bet. Okay. McKinnon touchdown for the Chiefs. I actually looked at it. I didn't like the odds on DraftKings. I'm going to look a couple other places, see if I find a little bit better odds. But the guys just keep scoring out of the backfield. If they get near the goal line, and then Holmes does a little dump off, McKinnon touchdown. I think it's going to happen again.
Yeah, you know what? Donnie's pick of the week is going to be the Giants, money line, and the Giants. And, if you're scared to go straight money line, Giants against the spread. You hear that, all Giants fans? Smitty from the group home. You hear that? Big Kubiak, I love you. But you hear that? Giants both ways.
All right. And I think that's it for us. One quick note. I have to shout out to my boy, Steve Vella, because he's been picking all these comebacks. He said Jacksonville was coming back when they were down 27-0. And the only reason I thought he was serious was because he did say the Vikings were coming back against the Colts when they were down, whatever that was, 30-0. So either he's insane or he's genius or he's psychic or something. But shout out to Steve Vella there.
Yo, he needs to have our private line and give us jump on that. Because I swear, if we jumped on it, maybe Hidden Gem Football would just be in a studio somewhere. Who knows? So look, feel free to DM him, DM me. Look, I need as much bread as possible. I'm trying to get out my current situation. You know what I'm saying?
I hear you. All right, man. Wrap it up. What you got?
Okay. Well, this week has been another great edition of Hidden Gems Football. And Hidden Gems Football is about the 19 Media Group. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
is a 19 Media Group presentation.
But yeah, I'll save that venom for freaking Dallas and all these people that made me lose parlays.
Your phone was telling you, wake up, pick the Bills. Bills in a blowout.
That's his problem. That's his problem. But hey, at least we don't got to talk about those overrated fights anymore. Even though that takes all my possibility of throwing shots and darts every fucking week away. But hey, listen, the best thing is they're eliminated. They're out of here. So therefore, I have no thoughts about anything in the Great Lakes, especially my money.
Oh my goodness.
The ticker.
Yes.